Hello, my name is Mark and welcome to I Am Organic Gardening. I'm located in the state of New Jersey, and today we're going to go over the difference between regenerative gardening and organic gardening. Now, I also have a 22-acre farm which is outside the window here, and I've been organic farming for it's almost close to 15 years now, and I don't use any fertilizer or pesticides or herbicides or nothing. I've learned to unlock the secret of nature in the soil, and I'm talking a real soil. So the difference between regenerative gardening and organic gardening, or organic farming and regenerative farming, is what is inside a growing potential that you have, like soil. Soil definition is a mixture of sand, silt, and clay. It's beautiful. The reason why we have to use sand, silt, and clay, because these amaryllis I have growing here is growing in peat moss with worm castings. They really don't even need nutrients because the bulb that grows these beautiful flowers has enough stored energy in it. So when it comes to agriculture or regenerative gardening, you want real soil. Again, that's the mixture of sand, silt, and clay. It can be any type of mixture. It can be 90% sand and 10% clay and a little bit of silt. Organic matter only is about 5% of the volume of what you have. So if you have a cubic square foot, only 5% of that is organic matter. And that's where a lot of people might go off in a different direction. You don't have to add a lot of organic material to your soil. So what I want to emphasize now is that we have these beautiful amaryllis, and when you grow them in real soil that's in a pot or so, that soil of sand, silt, and clay gets its beautiful rich color, not from organic material or manure or worm castings. It's from carbon from the air. It's very important to understand that, because what this plant is doing is capturing sunlight, and actually all plants feed the soil. The sunlight will hit the plant through photosynthesis. We'll take that and put it down in the stems and go out in the roots and form exudates in the soil. Those exudates is actually like a carbon, a liquid carbon. That's that rich color in the soil like I mentioned before. That is giving those nutrients or food. That carbon that this plant is pushing in the soil is giving food to microbes in the soil. And I'll show you a picture later at the end of the video of the microbes. Microbes is really two basic things. You have your bacteria and fungi, that's in group A, and in group B is your protozoas and nematodes. They eat each other and then poop out nutrients to make the plant work. So back to the worm castings for a second. The worm castings is a process that the worm has that goes through this, and those bacteria and fungi and protozoas and nematodes are inside that worm, and when it poops it out, it's ready to go. Those castings are pure nutrients that you can add to any soil. So regenerative gardening, the key point to regenerative gardening is you have to keep the soil alive all the time. So that's why farmers had difficulties over the years, because they would grow the crop in the ground and they wouldn't have a cover crop or a living root after. So let's say they grow corn for 100 days or 120 days, they harvest it, and then over winter there's no living root in the ground. That living root is necessary to keep putting carbon in the ground, and also necessary to keep those microbes alive and also the fungi alive. So if you don't have a living root in the ground, you don't get the benefit of regenerative agriculture. And then all the animals come in and eat and poop, and birds and worms and mice and rabbits, you name it. All those things are part of nature, and it will just keep on recycling. When this plant grows, and this is another important thing, when this plant grows, it's taking very little nutrients out of the ground. Only about 4 to 5% of its, what you see here is nutrients out of the soil or out of the worm castings inside this peat moss. That's hard to understand, and I took years to grasp that. So what we're looking at here is, besides these beautiful amaryllis, this plant that you see and the flower is made up, 95% of this whole thing you're seeing here is made up of water and carbon. Can you imagine that? Water and carbon is making up this plant. Only 5 to 4% is nutrients that come from the pot or from organic soil outside, your sand, silt, and clay. That sand and silt and clay is also important to understand, because what it's doing, it's not decomposing and turning back into carbon and going back up in the atmosphere. Sand, silt, and clay is minerals that's going to feed your plants through the process of breaking it down through the bacteria and fungi and so on, and then pooping it out and then delivering the nutrients to your plant. When you farm or do regenerative gardening, you're relying on that organic gardening. When you don't have that in the ground per se, is when things get difficult. If you just grow in peat moss or coconut coir or anything else either, all that is actually dying and evaporating out of the soil. And soil is based on, at least half the soil should be air and water in the ground. That's half of it, and only 5% organic material. So look at the beautiful flowers. It's starting to snow outside. We're supposed to get a major snowstorm in the future here, and the rest of the United States is, and I understand people are without power already. But I wanted to emphasize the beginning of this new year, and Happy New Year, by the way, that gardening is easy. We're making it too complicated. All these products that you see in the store aren't necessary. Fertilizer isn't necessary. Pesticides aren't necessary. Herbicides, weed killer isn't necessary. By just using organic mulch, organic material that you add to the soil doesn't really do much. It's really better left on top of the soil to give a general purpose of not evaporating the moisture out of the soil and keeping those microbes alive. I've went over a lot of material in this, and I will give you the graph now of all the bacteria and fungi that's in the soil in a little bit. But also, don't overcomplicate it. Nature, once you understand it, is always on your side. We wouldn't have survived, let's say in the last 50 to 75 years, we have used science to detect the problems with agriculture, and they're making a profit on it, which is good, because then we more understand what's going on. Now, what we should also realize too, from the time that man and woman walked this planet and other people, it's important to know that there was no labs you can send the soil to. There was no, let's say, nutrients you can buy in a store or anything else either. We relied on nature. So why are we getting away from it when it's right there in front of us? We're being taught a different avenue that is driven by profit. If you just go back and enjoy nature for what it is, it's really here and will stay here until something major happens to this planet. So enjoy it. It's free. There's carbon in air and nitrogen. Most of the nitrogen that you see that's growing in this plant, that's giving it its green color and strength, that nitrogen comes from the air. It's not nitrogen that's in the ground. Lightning, when it hits soil, puts nitrogen back in the soil. A lot of people don't know that either. Nitrogen, none of these things that you buy ever go away. Like all the nutrients, all the micro and macronutrients, they don't evaporate and dissolve and just go out. We're locked inside a globe on this planet, and they're here to stay. We just need to recycle them constantly again and again and enjoy life. And the benefit of the difference of growing in peat moss or coconut coir or compost is it's not, and I'll talk about this more in another video, it's not delivering the nutrients to the plant. So it's delivering some nutrients to keep the plant alive. But the vitamins that we get out of it is less and less a year, all over the year, because it's bypassing nature. We're taking a shortcut with, like I say, a chemical fertilizer to deliver the beautiful plant to us, and maybe a bountiful harvest. But the nutrient value of that food is so much less. It's not even funny. It's over the last 50 years, it's cut down in half. There's less vitamin C, there's less of everything, less calcium in the fruits and vegetables that we eat today because we're not following nature rules. Regenerative agriculture, regenerative gardening is enlightening people to follow those rules and understand it. And guess what? It's free. So if you want to do regenerative gardening, think cover crops or a living root in the ground. For example, you can plant strawberry plants in the front row and then plant tomato plants behind it. That living root over the period that it's in the ground is growing soil. It's taking carbon out of the atmosphere, putting it back in the ground, and that living root in the ground also is growing fungi, because fungi needs a living root to go inside the plant, harvest the little cell, grow fungi in it, and then grow fungi out into the ground. That's called mycorrhizal fungi, and that's important. That opens up every single pore in the ground, and so does the old roots in the ground that are dying off and living and dying off. That's the organic material you're doing. So just to recap a couple of things before I show you the diagram is enjoy the knowledge that plants feed the soil. Soil is sand, silt, and clay mixture, and it can be any type of percentage you want in there. And the other part of soil is air and water. This does not decompose. The water might evaporate and the air is needed to grow plants, but you also have to have a better understanding how free this is and how nutrient dense your vegetables and fruits will be when you grow in real soil. You do not get it from any other way. If you grow in potting mix, it doesn't have that capability of doing that. Even if you add all the minerals, it's going to bypass. And also I want to emphasize, when your plant isn't doing well or isn't healthy, it's because that bacteria and fungi that's in the soil, that's the part of the immune system to this plant. If you don't have the correct bacteria and fungi in potting mix, that's fake soil, you're not going to get a healthy plant. It's just not going to work for you. And I've been on YouTube for 12 years now, and the number one question is, why do I have pests every year in my garden? And the first thing I ask is, what type of soil are you growing in? And I refer to it as soil because people think peat moss or bag mix that they buy at a big box store is soil. It's not. Sand, silt, and clay is soil, and that builds open air gaps or tunnels in the soil because it's not decomposing. Yes, people can grow things in compost. All these beautiful farmers that grow in compost, they have to make it every year because where is it going? It's not going in the ground. It's going back up in the air as carbon dioxide. So let's go look at that graph and I'll give you a better understanding. This is just a general video of all the things that you need to know to have a successful garden and what's the difference between regenerative gardening and organic gardening. These are grown organically. Peat moss and compost, or peat moss and worm castings. But I'm not going to eat these flowers, so I don't care what, as long as they're growing healthy and they're not going to get pests because they're inside my house right now, I'm inside my kitchen, that this will be healthy. So the only thing it really needs from me is sunlight and water. that is understandable. But when you're outside and you have pests eating it, or other animals eating it, or lack of water, your sand, silt, and clay is going to hold water in the ground. It holds for if you have a 5-gallon bucket and you break it down, at least 1 gallon and 1 quart is stored water in the ground of sand, silt, and clay. So I hope you're enjoying this so far. It's a lot of information, but I have to go over the basics with it again, and it might not be clear. So ask questions, write a comment, talk to me, and we'll figure this out together. It's just taking what I know as a farmer, organic farmer, to share with you in regenerative gardening that can just benefit you in every type of scenario of your life. I don't want you spending a lot of time in the garden except for harvesting and enjoying the growing of that plant and not getting attacked by pests. So that's my goal on my channel. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and see what other things I can come up with to explain. I'm always coming up with new examples and understanding because everybody learns differently, and I want you to feel comfortable with the knowledge you have. So when somebody else gives you advice, you can ask a question to them. They might be right about something, and understand what they're trying to say and to link everything together so it just falls into place with you, that you have a good, complete understanding. Because the number one thing is soil. It all starts with soil. It's not how many seeds you plant. That's the easy part. Putting a seed in the ground, it's going to work. And all these years that we had to rely on just nature to do this, we should have really recognized that we don't need much help with nature. Nature's got this. The only time nature gets furious is that sometimes we get too much sunlight or too much rain or hot or cold. That's going to happen. That's what farmers, and my grandparents were farmers, and just it's heartache or hailstorms. There's other things to deal with, but let nature grow your food for you and enjoy it when you can, and enjoy the beautiful taste of it. Okay, let's go get the graph and I'll be right back. So this sheet is also on my Facebook page. I Am Organic Gardening on Facebook. And what you can see here, that we have bacteria and fungi. That's group A. Now these are eating and breaking down. This is usually breaking down the organic material, and this is breaking down the harder minerals that are in the ground, your micro and macro minerals in your sand, silt, and clay, the fungi. And also the bacteria is doing that too, but that's usually going after the organic material. Now, these eat the food that's in the ground and also carbon. Now, when they get full and they're ready to be eaten, they're eaten by these other things that are living in your soil called protozoas and nematodes. That's group B. Now, when the group B eats group A, they poop this very enriched nutrients, manure, into the ground, and that's what feeds our plants. This is just basic science 101, and this has only been discovered in the last, let's say, 10 to 20 years. And I have a microscope that I bought, and I'll be sharing you with live action of this happening, not so much the eating, but of these swimming around in the ground in my soil on my farm. And just to give you an idea, let's say the size of my thumb here, if you took the same amount of soil, 1 tablespoon, there's over 1 billion microorganisms in that same area or that same volume as my thumb. That is just insane. And they grow, let's say, they multiply every 20 minutes or so. Another little fun fact. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, give it a good thumbs up, and I'll see you shortly with another one. And enjoy your new year, and a great way to start organic gardening and regenerative gardening. Thanks.